The next speaker has the long and somewhat complicated name, and might I add, beautiful, Athanasia Mowinckel. But generally, she just goes by the name of Mo. She is a PhD fellow in the Cognitive Neuroscience group and is researching decision-making in adults with ADHD. She is also a member of the department board and a chair of the PsyDoc union, the organization for PhD students and postdoc fellows. And she actually organized tonight's event. So I think that requires a bit of an applause. Mo is also a trained ballerina, a keen urban gardener, and a food enthusiast. And she will be speaking tonight about how she got into the perhaps somewhat not obvious field of neuroscience and reveal to us what her dissertation is all about. So please welcome Mo.
Er den på? Ja, det var den. Well, okay. So when I finished high school, I was supposed to be a dancer. That changed. Then I wanted to be a pharmacist. But I didn't have the grades to do that. So I decided a year of psychology, that's always going to come in handy. During that year, I realized that psychology is super awesome. And my slides should be changing. And especially the process of attention is very, very interesting. So how are we seeing just what we want to see? But whenever I researched attention disorders, ADHD kept on popping up everywhere, and me wanting to be unique decided I'm not going to research ADHD. 7 years later, I'm researching ADHD, and I actually really like it. There's so much uncertainty about this disease we've been medicating since the early 30s, and how do we still have questions? So I'll go through some research before I come to my own. So we know that in countries where children go to school with peers born in the same year as them, children born in December are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than children born in January. So immaturity and ADHD symptoms apparently coincide. And data from the Norwegian Institute of Public Health has shown that in counties right next to each other in Norway, you have the highest and the lowest prevalence rate of diagnosis in the country. So that seems a bit strange. We also know that the placebo effect is evident in children, or in parents and teachers of children, and not in the children themselves. So a study has shown that when parents think that a child has been given Ritalin, they rate them as more well-behaved. So they see what they want to see. So being sure of the diagnosis and the treatment of children is quite tricky. Children, to a lesser degree, can self-evaluate their own diagnosis or how the drugs affect the way they work. So I don't research children. I research adults, and specifically adults with ADHD who choose to medicate. Why do they medicate? So adults, to a higher degree, can decide whether the medication actually helps them or not. And some decide not to medicate, while others decide to continue. So why are they so different? So in data we got from the hospital in Tønsberg, we found that adults that were still medicating after a year of starting medication performed much worse on a test of attention before they started medicating. And a month later, they tested much, much better, which is the orange line. But the adults that had discontinued medication within the first year of medical treatment didn't really score that bad to begin with, and didn't really get that much better either. So apparently there is some objective way to measure this. Can this help us explain why there is a higher rate of risky behavior in adults with ADHD? They are more prone to gambling, more prone to unprotected sex, and also to risky driving. So what in the drugs are helping them? So Ritalin is an amphetamine-like drug. And many adults who have ADHD report trying amphetamine as teens and having a very different effect than their peers. They calm down while everyone strings up. So we believe that this is because of the neurotransmitter dopamine, which has a very delicate balance in the brain. If you have too much or too little, you become hyperactive. If you have the right amount, you're calm and focused. So if you already have a good balance of dopamine in your brain and you take more, you become hyperactive. While if you already have too little, as is thought with those with ADHD, taking more will make you more balanced in your dopamine levels and therefore make you calmer. So how do I study this? I study this in an MRI machine, which I like to think of as a Starship Enterprise. It measures the blood activity in people's brains. And we measure this while people take decisions lying in the scanner, since decisions also are known to be part of the dopaminergic system. What I get out of the MRI is something like this. It's a gazillion of tiny, tiny pictures of people's brains. It doesn't really make much sense because the pictures look exactly the same. Thankfully, I don't have to look at data like this. Usually, some very, very clever people have designed some tools for me to make it look more like this, which is more fancy and fun, and it makes my life a lot easier, because then I can start trying to figure out where that 1% in blood flow happens, change in blood flow happens. So this looks fancy and cool, but I never actually look at things like this, because it's too complicated. I look at things like this. And here you see a picture of the same patient making decisions about winning money. And on the top, you see the placebo condition, and on the bottom, you see the Ritalin condition. So a lot more is happening. When they have Ritalin in their body, their brains work more. And the data we have from the choices they make corroborate this. The controls make very good decisions while they lie in the scanner, 90% correct. The placebos do worse, which means that the ones without Ritalin do very badly, whilst when they have Ritalin, they do very well. So sometimes life takes you places you thought you didn't want to go. But if you dive in, you might realize, just like I did, that just about anything is really, really interesting once you get into it. Thank you.